in here, right? And you've all taken a whack at getting some walls drawn in here. But what would have been really helpful is if you had known, right? And I knew this going into it. You wouldn't know how to draw grids yet, right? But going into it, grids would be very helpful, right? So a lot of these walls are really kind of defined off this grid, right? So how do we use that grid? Number one, how do we draw it? And then how do we use it to help us draw the walls in the right place, right? So I want to talk about that today. Grids are really easy to use, all right? And we can create a grid in a floor plan view. I was just thinking, I don't think, oh yeah, you can, I guess. Or an elevation view. I guess I've just never done that before. I think probably I've never done that before because it makes sense to draw a structural grid in floor plan view, right? But a structural grid, or if it's not a structural grid, whatever type of grid that helps you organize your architecture, whatever you're drawing, is always very helpful, right? So I want to show you how to add grids. Okay. So I'm in a floor plan view right now, so I don't need to navigate to one, but I'm in the main level floor plan here. And I go to architecture, the architecture tab. I'm going to move all the way down here to grid. Okay, so right next to levels, but levels is grayed out, of course, because number one, we're not generating levels right now, but these can only be generated in a view with a vertical definition. So sections, elevations, those type of things. I'm going to click on grid, and you notice we have a few different ways we can draw a grid. We can use the line tool, the pick tool, and we have a couple arcs. I'm just going to use the line tool to create a grid. I'm going to go into my drawing space here. I'm going to click once, move in the direction I want to go, click again, hit escape, and there's my grid, right? It's as easy as that, okay? So if I click on my grid now, you'll notice there's a little bubble at the end. These function a lot like levels in that there's a little check mark here where I can check and uncheck it and have that appear, okay? This little indication right here, this little 3D, okay, this indicates that this grid will be seen in, it's sort of a, if you think about it in terms of if this grid were a physical object and it were twirling around in like a saw blade, right, in space, you can view this in all 3D views, essentially, right? So if this is clicked to 3D, which is what we want to be able to see our grid in all views, this 3D setting is allowing that to happen. So I can come up here, I can click on this little check mark and turn that little bubble at the end on, right? If I don't want it to say 1, I want it to say ABC or A1, A2, A3, or 11, 12, 13, I can do that, okay? So I can click again. I could change that to A if I wanted to, right? Which I'm not going to do. Click, 1, enter. There's my first grid, okay? If I go into my north elevation, there's my grid, right? So it's showing up where it needs to. All right, so I have one grid here. I have a second grid here, and that is 6 feet away from the first grid. So how do I create that? Well, I could grab this grid and I could CO copy it and copy it over 6 feet. That's completely valid. I could also come back up here to the grid command. Looks like it's GR for a keyboard shortcut. Click. I could use my pick tool, right? I could change my offset to 6 feet, enter, and I hover over this, click, and it creates a second grid 6 feet away from the first one. Okay, so I could click on my little bubble there. Looks pretty good. Without talking about dimensions too much, because we're going to get into that in the next class or two, I do want to show you how to create a simple dimension so that you can check these things, right? Because I look at these and I'm pretty sure that I input 6 feet, but maybe I mistyped something and they're actually 5 feet apart, right? I can click on one and my temporary dimension does pop up, but if for some reason it doesn't happen to pop up, if you want to go to annotate and go to aligned dimension, okay, I can click on one object, click on a second object, click in space, and I get a dimension. So I'm going to leave it as simple as that. Click on one object, click on the second object, click in space to end it. All right. escape, escape. I can click on it and hit delete when I'm done. So I just wanted to show you how to create a quick dimension so that you can measure things visually without getting too much into dimensions. You can also come up here to our quick access menu here. We have a measure between two references. It's a little ruler. You see that? Where I can click. I can click once, click a second time, and I get my temporary dimension. Okay, so I can measure things. I can look for temporary dimensions if they pop up in the right spot, and then I can also add a dimension if I need to. Well, I have another grid over here. Number 3, and it's 9 feet away from the second one. So I'm going to go back to grid, architecture, grid, which is GR, and that was 9 feet, so the offset is 9 foot, enter. Click on my pick, click, there's my grid, right? I turn my little bobble, and again, I always really want to measure things. I'm just used to get used to double checking. 9 foot, looks good. All right, so I'll hurry and just create the rest of these grids. And let's see here. Here we go. 3, so we have 4 through 8 that we need to create. So I'll move through those pretty quickly. Okay, maybe I can even get my, here we go, my screen to split here. There we go. All right, so grid is GR. I choose my pick, and I want to create grid 4, which is 4 foot off 3. All right, so 4 foot, enter, click. Great. Grid number 5 is 10 foot 6. 10 space 6, enter, click. Great. Next one is 4 foot 6. 4 space 6, enter. Okay, and then we have 3, 4, 5, 6. We have grid number 7 that we want to create, which is 8 foot 6. 8 foot 6. And then we have one more, which is 4 foot. There we go. So I have this system of grid lines, right? Looks great. I click on my grid line, and I just turn on my little bobble, and there we go. It's going to sequentially number these. If I had accidentally deleted number 4 and I want to put number 4 back, it would number it as number 9, grid number 9, and I just have to change the number. Okay. So I also have a horizontal grid here. So let's start that. So at grid GR on the keyboard, I click my first one. There we go. See, it's thinking, well, you had 8 last time, let's do number 9. But I don't want to do number 9, I want A. So I'm going to click again, A, enter. Okay, B is 4 feet off of that, so grid, GR, 4, enter, just like we did on the other ones, the vertical ones. 12 foot 9. 12 space 9, enter. Oh, wrong side. Control Z. Control Z. There we go. Grid, GR. So to C, it's 12 foot 9. There we go. And then to D, it's 6 foot 3. 6 space 3, enter. Click, there's D, and then we have from D to E, we have 19 feet. 19 feet? 19 feet. Okay, 19, enter. There we go. So there's my grid, right? And then I just kind of come in here and I, aesthetically look at it and just make sure it's doing what I want it to do. This is a little bit long, so I click on this, right? I think I said this before too. In Revit, you were probably thinking, well, where did you first decide? Why did you choose to put A right there, right? What dimension is it from the top of this down? Well, I don't have an answer for that, right? I just started creating my grid, A, and it didn't really matter how far it was from, you know, this vertical grid here, right? The only important thing was that at 2 and A, that's kind of where my wall starts, or the window starts right there, I guess I should say, right? The core of that wall starts. So I didn't really kind of pick a specific place to generate this grid. I just made the grid system function the way it should, right? And you're saying, well, these are really long. They are, right? So I'm just going to click on one of them and it links all the rest, and I can drag this up, right? Okay. And it's a little bit askew, right? It's a little close to this, it's a little close to that, further away from here and there. Doesn't really matter. The grid system is working. I could move these elevation markers if I needed to, or if I'm really kind of picky about this, I could grab it because no walls have been generated. I could use the move tool and I could kind of move it, you know, into the center, or I could nudge it with my arrow keys to where I wanted it to be, right? So there's my grid. If I go to an elevation, because those have 3D extents on them, there's my grid, right? Interacting with my levels, okay? So we have our gridded system. We know how to create walls. We know how to define them, right? I will draw just a couple walls, and then I want to show you how to add doors and windows to your models, okay? So, first thing, let's just look at our PDF of our Imbue cabin here, right? And I'm going to look here and say, I don't quite maybe know what this wall type is. I'm sure that it's really well defined somewhere else in the set if I remember correctly, or maybe they didn't give us that. Did they? I do see 2x6 wood framed wall, blown in fiberglass insulation, wall sheathing, air and water barrier. We have a 1-inch air gap, split face CMU block. Okay, so although I don't have a typical wall type defined like as a wall type, I can look at some of these details and figure out what this wall is composed of, right? So hopefully I'll remember what that is, because I'm going to redefine our wall system to look the way I want it to look. Okay. Oh. There we go. Okay. So I want to draw some walls, but I need to create this wall type first. So I'm going to come up to wall, and this one was fairly similar before I messed it up, right? I'm going to choose the wall type most similar to the one I want to generate, which is this new wall type. So I'm going to choose CMU on metal stud because I altered the other one, if you remember. I'm going to hit edit type. I'm going to create a new one by duplicating it. Duplicate, rename, and then redefine CMU on wood stud with wood stud. We'll just wood stud bare. I have to give it a different name. Let's see, we'll call it honed. There we go. So I've given it a new name. I'm going to hit edit to the assembly, and we have CMU 8-inch. Yes, we have a thermal air layer. This thermal air layer is only 1 inch. So instead of 3 inches, 1 inch. We have an air infiltration barrier. Yes. We have plywood sheathing. Are they giving a... They're calling out their sheathing. Good note. See structural. We'll just leave it as plywood, 3/4 inch. Instead of a metal stud layer, we're going to do a wood stud layer, and it's a 2x6 wood framed wall. So I'm going to change this from metal stud to softwood lumber. Hit OK. Oop. A wood stud is 5.5 inches, a 2x6. Then we have our vapor barrier, which they've called out here somewhere. And then they have gypsum wallboard, which they're doing 5/8 inch. So 0, 5/8. And I'm going to hit OK. OK. And I just created a new wall type, right? And I can use that to draw now. All right. So some things I want, I'm going to go back to the floor plan, and I'm going to think about how to draw this now, right? You've all done an exercise in and worked on this. But now I have these grids that can help me draw, right? And I'm going to look at how these grids sort of interact with my walls, and I'm going to draw them the best I can. So as I look at this wall assembly, I notice that the grids are not lined up with the outside of the wall. They're lined up with that wood stud, right? Which is the core boundary. That's what it's called here, okay? So I'm going to draw a few of these walls, and I probably will just draw the exterior walls, right? And I'm going to use the definition on my wall a definition on my wall to draw them, and that definition will be to use the core boundary to draw them, okay? And you're thinking, how in the world am I going to remember this? But I think it's going to make a lot of sense once I show you exactly what we're doing. Oh, I think our download is done. There we go. All right. So when I say I want to draw these walls according to their core boundary, it has to do with their location line, right? So if I start drawing a wall right now, it's going to be according to its center line. So if I pick this wall or this grid, architecture wall, and I start drawing, you see it's drawing to the center line, which doesn't make sense, okay? That doesn't make sense at all. And so I'm going to go to wall, and if I choose finish face exterior, it draws to the exterior of the wall. Not what I want either, right? I want to start drawing my wall from the core boundary here. Okay, so I don't want the location line to be out here. I want it to be over here. So as I start drawing, I'm going to choose core face exterior, core face. And you see how it changes right to there where I want it to go. Okay, so that's how you're going to get your walls to line up with your grid. Now, if you've drawn it wrong, right? Wrong, right? You could always go back and line it up using the align tool. So I could type AL align, which is also under modify. There's align. And I could pick this grid line. This is the grid line. Click. And I'm gonna try and hit that line. See, it's not selecting it, so I can tab. See how when I tab, it chooses different points. Tab, click, and it will align it to that, right? So if you've done it wrong, you need to get it where it needs to be. Just use the align tool. But you know, so that I don't have to do it again, I'm just going to draw it right the first time, hopefully. Okay, so let's get this so I can see things a little better. So my wall starts at the grid line A and 2. So I'm going to start drawing from here down and go over and down again. Okay. So I go to architecture, wall, make sure that my location line is finish face, core face exterior. There's a lot of things to remember the first time you do this, right? And you'll forget, and you'll do it wrong. You have to redo it, and that's okay. There's no problem with that. And I'm going to start here at grid A and 2. Click, move in the direction I want to go. Now, it's drawing along, do you see how, wait, let's see. It's drawing along where it needs to. I want to show you one quick thing, though. Let me change my view real quick. Sorry. I'm going to hit escape. There we go. Okay, wall, WA, finish face, core face exterior. Okay, A and 2. There we go. Click. Oh, it's not drawing shaded. Shoot. All right. So one thing I want to show you is that, you see I can flip my wall? I'm using the space bar to flip my wall. And that is because if I click now, you see how the exterior of the wall is on the inside of the space? It's wrong. Whereas if I had space barred, it would put it the right way. It's still drawing along that core face, but it's confused on what inside and outside is, right? So you're probably thinking, well, why does it have a core face interior and exterior option? Well, it gets confused. It has it so that if you know, in the ideal world, it will work, but it does get confused at times. So I just want to make you aware, if your wall is being drawn inside out, right, you can click on it and space bar, or you can space bar it while you're drawing and it will flip it. You can also, after it's drawn, use this little grip, change wall's orientation, and it will do the same thing, right? Okay, so I'm going to continue drawing my wall here. I'm going to delete that one and start over actually. Click on wall. I'm going to start at A and 2 again, and I'm going to go from A and 2 all the way down to D and 2. So click and spacebar, zooming in and out down to D and 2. Click. Then I have to go over to D and 1. 1 and D, whatever, right? Click. And I'm going to continue on all the way down to E. I'm zooming out, I'm zooming in, I'm panning, right? I'm doing it pretty quick because I'm used to it. You guys will get used to it. But don't be afraid to zoom in, to zoom out, and to pan back and forth, right? To get things where they need to be. Zoom way in there if you need to. It's not wrong, right? It really helps. Click. Zoom out so I can see the grids. I know I have to move in this direction, so I'm going to go all the way over to, it looks like, grid line 6. Okay, so I'm going to go over to grid line 6, and I'm going to click, and then I'm going to go all the way up to grid line, what is that, C, right? Okay, looks good. Grid line C, click. So I'm right here now, and I need to go over to grid line 7. Okay, grid line 7, click, and then go back up to grid line 2, A, grid line, oh, I hit escape on my command, so I'm just gonna click on wall again, continue on, click, spacebar to get it the right orientation, go up to there, click, and then finish off my wall. You'll notice that as I move down and I kind of move along, all of the walls join very nicely, right? All of the elements come together and clean up. There's no trimming or extending that needs to happen, right? I don't have to fill it the edges like I do with AutoCAD. All of this just sort of automatically joins very nicely, which is really wonderful. And I have the outline of my space here now, right? Now that I have the outside of my space, I could start drawing the inside of my space. Although these are going to be a different wall type, right? It's going to be probably, you know, a 2x4 or a 2x6 wall with gypsum board on both sides. Okay. Any questions on any of that so far? Okay. So I'm going to pop into 3D and take a look at this. And in doing this, I just realized I did something bad. I forgot to do something. I forgot to define how tall my walls were going to be, right? I just started drawing. And the implication, because I started on the main level, is that these walls do start on the main level. So if I click on one, it says the base constraint is the main level, which is great. But it says up to top of wall. So I was actually pretty lucky on that one because, yeah, I probably wanted to go to top of wall, right? But let's say that you forgot to do the same thing that I did and you need to fix it. How do I fix that? Well, I'm going to want to probably choose all these walls at the same time. So I'm going to go into my 3D view here. I'm going to hover over one of my walls. Remember this. Tab one time, click, select them all at once, and then I'm going to change the top definition or whatever I want to change about them. So let's take them all the way up to roof, right? Or wherever they needed to be, top of wall. If it says unconnected here, then you'll just change it to have a top definition, okay? So I have all my lovely walls drawn. Looks pretty good. I'm going to go back to my main level here. Now I want to add some doors and I want to add some windows, all right? This cabin, let's look at the doors and windows we have here. View, there we go. This has some funky kind of windows, okay? So we'll get to that. You won't have the right window type for these yet, but I do want to talk about windows. You'll probably be able to download a fixed window like this and you'll be able to download some of these just generic type windows, which is what you're going to do for your assignment. And then we'll go back and talk about how to customize them. Because I think it's important to be able to find windows within the library, the Revit library, or online and use them, but also how to create some custom shaped ones, okay? We also have some doors here, so I'm going to zoom in here. We have, let's see, we have a door with glass in it. We have a sliding door, right? We have some just swing doors. We have some looks like sliding doors, pocket doors is what I'm looking for the interior. But all of these are labeled, right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So if I go back and I look at my floor plan, right, I can see that this is door number 1, okay. Well, door number 1 happens to be this glass door, and it's 8 foot tall and it's 4 foot wide, okay? And then I've got some interior doors and all that good stuff. So let me show you how to add doors and let me show you how to add windows, okay? I'm gonna bring this full screen here. I'm gonna maximize this. The process really for adding doors and windows to your model is identical, essentially. Doors and windows are both considered components, right? And I think I've said before, components and the term families are used interchangeably, and really they mean the same thing in Revit. So a family, if you want to, those of you who've used AutoCAD, that's the same thing as a 3D block, essentially. A family is a series of objects that work together to represent an item. So a door is not just a door, right? It's a panel, it has a frame, it has door hardware like a doorknob on it. It might have a kick plate, it might have a closer, right? So a family is all of those elements grouped together to function as that object, right? And it's 3D in Revit, okay? So if I go to the architecture tab, you'll notice that we have door and we have window, right? Doors and windows are both components / families. Term means the same thing, okay? One time I think I sort of I was looking on the Autodesk blog wondering why we had 2 different names for things. And I believe they said that component was what they originally called them. And then in the progression of the software, they started calling them families later on. But the command sort of stayed the same, right? So I can click on component and I can choose place a component, which is what we want to do. We don't want to model in place yet, all right? And that will place different types of components. Doors and windows, because they're so common, I would assume, they're very common, and obviously in architecture. They have their own button, their own icon to use. They have their own keyboard shortcut, DR and WN, which I'll use to place these, okay? So if I want to place a door, for example, I can click on door, and I can use this drop-down menu and properties like I do with walls to see what kind of doors are in this project. There's only 1 so far. But if this was the right type and I wanted to place the door, I would pick the size. I would hover over a wall and click. Okay. Those of you that use AutoCAD, you're like, wow, so amazing, right? All I do is click and this door magically trims out an opening. It's so magical. And it really is magical, right? Components / families are considered hosted elements, and so they need something to be hosted into. And a wall is considered a host, right? So what you may have noticed is when I click on door, I can't just click in space over here, right? I can't create a door out in no man's land. But I can go over a wall, click, and place a door, okay? And what that looks like in 3D, oh, look at that. When I create the door in 2D, it magically generates the elevation view in 3D, okay? So let's see, what side of the building is that? That's the west side. So we'll look at the west side elevation, and I see my doors appear, okay? Window tile, WT, and I can open up the 2 views at the same time. Click here, zoom in and out, click here, zoom in and out, right? Just to look and see what's happening. All right, I'm going to click on this door, And again, because I'm on the main level floor plan, it sort of assumes, Revit assumes that this door needs to be placed on the main level, which makes sense because why would you place doors on levels you're not viewing, right? It does happen. So if you want the door to be on a different level, then you'd specify a different level. But in this case, right, you'll notice the level is assigned to main level. All right. I am allowed to give it a sill height. This is the same thing as a base offset. So I could say 6 inches, enter, and it pops the door up just 6 inches. Okay. I can click on that door again, and I could change it to, well, I don't have any wall up here, so it's not going to work, but you get the idea. You could change the level that it rests at. Okay. If I click on this door, a couple things you want to notice. We have these little grips that will allow you, this is magic too if you've been using AutoCAD, right? Click, oh, it flips the swing, right? Oh, look at that. Interior to exterior, side to side, left hand, right hand, right? I can change how these things function. Okay. I can also click on the door and I could use my arrows and I could nudge it to move it. Okay. I could also, this is the tricky part with Revit, right? There's not really, well, there but it's a little bit more complicated, but you know, normally there's a specific distance away from a wall you want a door to exist, you know, a foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 foot, right? If I look at the Imbue cabin, let's look at the Imbue cabin here. I don't know, well, I guess they don't have it dimensioned, right? But we could say, oh, look, it's a foot off of this interior wall right here. So this is one of those instances where in Revit, I get it as close to where I need it as possible, and then I have to move it into place, right? I think I've said that, which sounds very ridiculous, right? In AutoCAD, you try and draw things exactly perfect the first time. In Revit, you get things very close, and then you place it, okay? So I'm going to just flip it to the interior. I'm going to change, because I think that's what, yep, it looked like that. There's my swing, right? And if I wanted it to be a foot off of this wall, I'm just going to use a dimension to place it. That's how I'm going to place things. And again, very simply, we haven't talked about dimensions a whole lot, right? But I'm just going to go to annotate, aligned. Okay. I'm going to click here. You'll notice that I get these kind of almost object snaps appearing on objects here that I want to dimension, but I can click, tab, click and space. Let me do it one more time. I dimension that. I clicked on the edge here, click. I moved over to this wall, but I don't want it to be measured off the center line. I want it to be measured off the drywall here. So I'm going to tab until I get a blue highlight. You see that blue highlighting gauge? Click. And then I click in nowhere land and I get a dimension. All right. Now you'll get used to this process really quickly. This is I'll say this, but this is the kind of process. I know that Revit works like this. It slows things down a little bit, right? In Revit or in AutoCAD, we have things like the from command, and we have M2P to use to very quickly move and center objects. And we do have those methods in Revit, but they're a little bit slower, I think, than AutoCAD. But now this is 4 foot and 3/4 of an inch. Well, let's say I want it to be 18 inches off of this measurement. So I click on the door. My dimension becomes editable. The text becomes blue, and I could type in 1 foot 6, enter, and now that door is 1 foot 6 away from that wall. Okay, let me undo that. I click on the object I want to move. 1 foot 6, enter, and the door moved. Okay, if you want to move something using a dimension, you want to click on the object to be moved. If you have 2 walls and you want them to be 5 feet apart, pick the wall that you want to move to make that dimension work, and it will move that wall. So I click, I hit delete, and there's my door placed, and I can view it in my elevation. Now I'm going to click on this door. I don't want it to have a 6-inch offset, so I'm going to do 0, enter, and it goes back down. All right, so this door is great, except that it's not the right kind of door. The door that I actually want has glass in it, right? So I need to be able to, number one, change the definition of this door so it has glass in it, or I need to be able to go out and find another family that is already defined as a glass door and use it, okay? Families / components function a lot like AutoCAD blocks. So when you want to have something custom, you either draw it or you go out and you download the block to use. All right. I don't just sort of leave this door here and, I could leave this door here, but I want the door to kind of represent what it's actually supposed to be, have glass in it. Okay. So I'm going to go to architecture. I'm going to go to door. This door doesn't have any glass, so I need to go find one that has glass. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to load a family into my project. Okay, so this is something new we haven't talked about. I'm going to go to Insert, and I'm going to choose Load Family. And this Load Family dialog box pops up, and by default it takes you to the location of the Revit library. And the Revit library is where all of the families that are inherently kind of stock that come with Revit, that's where they're all stored. Okay, and they are pretty well categorized. There are a few that are a little odd, but in general, I can come down here and say, oh, there's doors. Click, click. Oh, I have commercial, hardware, and residential doors, and then I have a bunch that are kind of just out here. If I click on it and I just click one time, I can use my arrow key to mouse down and look at them. Ooh, there's a sliding. We'll use that in a minute, right? Okay, well, none of those doors are the ones I want, so I'm going to click on residential. No, no, no. We're just going to continue to move down until we find the one I want. So Revit actually has, oh, that looks pretty close. That looks pretty close, except it has those little, muntins or whatever on there, but I know that I can turn those off, and I'll show you how. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to hit open. And it will say, okay, that's great. And this only occurs on like doors and windows and things that are dimensional that have different sizes. It says, that's great. We have all of these sizes of this door. Which one do you want to load into your project, right? And usually my answer is all of them. Although this one actually is a lot. We could just pick one or two because we know the size of this glass door. So that glass door was, I think it was 4 foot by 8 foot. Number one. Let's see. Yeah, 8 foot tall by 4 foot wide. So we don't have one of those, but we have one that is 8 foot tall. So I think I'm just going to pick all the 8 foot tall doors with this glass one. Click on one, hold down Shift, click on a second, it highlights all of those, and I'm going to hit OK. And now by doing that, it loaded all of those door types in there. Okay, so now when I go back to architecture or I type DR, which is the keyboard shortcut for door, you'll see that I have that glass door available to me. All right, so I don't have the exact size that I need, but I think you guys can all know by now, we can alter what we do have to create the size that we need, right? With a wall, if I don't have the assembly I want, I grab a wall that is very closely defined to the one I want to create. I duplicate, rename, redefine. And I'm going to do the same thing with my door here. I have a 3 foot by 8 foot, right? But I don't have a 4 foot by 8 foot. So I'm going to pick my 3 foot by 8 foot. Okay. And I could place one if I wanted just to look at it. But just like a wall type, I can immediately choose edit. So I've edited it, duplicate, rename. So this will be 48. This is an easy rename because I know the dimensions. 48 inches by 96. Rename, okay. So I've just duplicated, renamed, and now I'm going to redefine the dimensions of it, right? A door doesn't have an assembly like a wall. It has dimensionality, it has a frame, different things like that. So anything that you can alter dimension-wise will show here, right? And they're all kind of free game. You don't want to make it extreme, like make this 400 feet tall because it might not work, might over constrain your little door. But I can come in and say, well, the width is going to be 4 foot instead of 3 foot. And I can hit OK. And I just created a new door type, right? Now, click, I place that door and oh, look at that, there's my door, okay? I'm going to click on my door and I'm going to look at it. So I don't have to go into edit type to do this, but you'll notice there are some kind of aesthetic settings in the properties when I select that door, like, do you want to show the grill? Nope, I don't. And it turns that grill off, right? So I don't see those muntins in there. Click. Do you want the swing to be 90 degrees, meaning open all the way on the floor plate? Or do we want it to be 45 degrees? Enter. I want it to look like that. Okay. So there are a few things that we can do here to customize it the way we want it to. Okay. Now, this is actually the door that we want to be 4 foot by 8 foot. So I already have a door there. I could delete this one and place a new one, but I can also select it, and I can use this drop down, and I can change the type. 4 foot by 8 foot. Now, the way that this door sort of placed itself was from the center line of the door. So you notice that now it's not 18 inches away from this wall, right? It's a lot closer because the door was bigger. So that is one kind of bad thing about Revit. It replaced that component from the center point, and I can't really change that. But I am able to get the door I want. It looks the way I want it to, and I can just reposition it, right? So I'm going to do a dimension, annotate, aligned. I click on the frame of my door, I tab, click, escape, click on the door. Let's do 2 feet here, 2 foot off that wall, right? If I click on the door, there's my little grips. I can flip it if I want to. Click, delete, and there's my glass door, right? I'm going to delete this door, delete that door, and there's my door, okay? So again, okay, just to kind of reiterate the process, I can go to Architecture, Door. I can use my drop down to pick what door I want to place. If I don't have a door type in here that looks like the one that I want to place, I can go to Insert, Load Family, or as I'm in the door command, Load Family pops up here. Click. Okay. I can go to the door location, and I can find the one I want. I do know that I'm probably going to need a sliding glass door, which I think was over here somewhere. If you're not finding what you need, just look around. That one looks like the one I need. So I'm going to hit open, click, shift, click to select all the sizes you want. Okay. And I've just loaded a type. So I can use existing door types in there, or I can go and find a new one and use that one. Okay. If I need to change the size of one of my doors, I can pick the door in the project and hit edit type, or I can go to door. I can select the one I want to edit. I can hit edit type, duplicate, rename, redefine, right? Same process as a wall. Duplicate. Let's make this 96 inches tall. Okay. And here, right, I don't have an assembly, but I do have these objects. So the height of this is going to change from 6'8" to 8 foot. Enter. Right? I hit OK. And now I have that door ready for use. Let's look at the imbue cabin. I can't quite remember where the sliding door was now. But I know we have one, right? Let's see. I thought we had one. Didn't we have a sliding door somewhere? Huh, maybe we didn't. Oh yeah, right there, right there. There's our sliding door. So my sliding door, I come over here, I place it, click. You'll notice that if I'm not over an element that will host that, it doesn't work. The second I move over a host, it works. Okay. if I placed it and I realize, oh my gosh, it's not the right width, right? It's the right height, but it's not the right width. I need to change that because when I look at the drawings here, it's number 2. Let's see how wide that is. Number 2, that is 8 foot wide. So it's 8 foot wide by 8 foot tall. Oh, that's actually 9 foot tall. But we'll just leave it at 8 foot. Okay, I can edit type, duplicate. We'll give it a rename. It's going to be 96 by 96. Okay. We'll change the width to 8 foot. Enter. The height is already 8 foot. I hit OK. And it changed it. Okay. So now I have my glass door. Now I just need to position it wherever it ends up needing to be positioned. Okay. So I'm going to use my little dimension, annotate, aligned, click, tab, click, and maybe I want it to be 2 feet off of that wall, 2 foot, enter, click, delete. There we go. Did that a little fast, but you can rewind the video, right? Okay, so that's how we're going to place doors, right? One more thing we're going to talk about today is how we're going to place windows, which is exactly how we place doors. The process is identical. So windows, instead of using the door command, we're just going to use the window command, right? Click. If I want to place a window, I have window types in the project. So we do have a few here that have already been loaded, which is nice. So I can pick from those, right? I can choose a casement 3 foot by whatever that dimension is, 34 by 36. Hover over my window, click, or over my wall, click, and it places a window. Okay. So windows, again, like doors, are families / components. Windows are associated with the floor plate that you're on. So if I'm on the main level, this window by default is associated with the main level. I can change the level if I want to. All right. It has a sill height. So this one is 3 feet because a 3 foot sill height for a window makes sense. But I could also change that. So I can click on it and say, let's make it a 4 foot window sill. Enter. Okay. If there is a new size of this window that I need to create and it's not existent in my Revit file currently, I click on it, I edit type, I duplicate it, I give it a new name. So let's make this 48 inches wide. I hit OK. Now the width is, instead of 2 foot 10 is going to be 4 foot, right? That's what I'm intending on making it. 4 foot, enter. Okay. And now I've just changed that window type to 4 foot, right? Same exact process as with a door. Okay. So if there is a window type that I need that is not in my project currently, I would go to Insert, Load Family. Instead of going in the door folder, I'm going to go all the way down to Windows. I'm going to find the window that I need in here. Right, so skylights are considered windows, right? So whatever one you want to use, you can come in here and find. Okay. I'm not really going to get into how do we go out and find them on the internet yet, which we will, because Revit, although they do have a lot of window types, they don't have everything that we need. But the internet generally does. So I can go to different manufacturers, window manufacturers, different websites, and I can find other families / components that I can then load into my Revit project and use. Okay. But in general, I think for what you're doing right now, I think that you'll be able to find what you need in the Revit project library. Okay. Any questions about windows or doors? Okay. So I haven't published your assignment quite yet, but you're going to draw some more walls, and then I'm going to have you add doors and windows to your project. So I'll have that posted by the end of the day today. I just don't quite have it posted. And I think for your window and door types, just try and find something that is closest to what you see in the view plans as you can find. Just find something very close. Now, with that said, I don't want you quite yet to worry about these custom shaped windows. Okay, so what I want you to worry about placing I want to see, you know, if there's a door here, place the door. If there's windows here, place the windows, right? There's windows here, there's windows here. Oh, that's a sliding door, that's a sliding door, that's a sliding door. So I want you to place all the doors, all the windows, exterior and interior. Find something that is most similar to what you see on this drawing here, with the exception of these kind of custom. So just if there's a window here, place a window, right? Try and get it to be as tall as the wall here, but don't worry about if it doesn't kind of angle like this and follow the roof line. We'll talk about that a little bit later, all right? So just find windows that are square, right? The right size, place them all where they need to go, and then we'll talk later on how they were able to get these custom shapes. So essentially you'll just be doing square windows for here, here, or the rectangular, I guess, right? And just use one type. There's a big window, there's a window. This is a sliding door, okay? Use this A2.2 window and door types to see how big these windows are and how tall they are. I think it's completely appropriate just to say for this window right here, we'll just do a square window. We'll encompass the whole thing, which means it's going to be 9'6" plus 2 foot. So that's 11'6". It's a big window, right? By 6 foot. So we'll have 3 of those, but don't worry about having this piece on the bottom and this piece on top and it angled. Just do kind of a rectangular one piece of window. Okay, I think that'll work just fine for this case. Make sense? Okay. So I'll post that. Like I said, I don't have the assignment quite posted. I will post it by the end of the day, but that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be making sure that all of your walls are generated, that the interior walls are generated, and that your doors and windows are added to the project. Okay? All right. I will